Welcome everybody. Welcome everyone to the full council meeting, including members, officers and any members of the public. Please be advised that the meeting will be live streamed and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the council's data protection policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the council's website. The following staff are in attendance: Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, Monitoring Officer and Democratic Services. Item 1, there is no scheduled test of the fire alarm, and if the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly using the doors signed as fire exit and assembling the car park at the front of the building and await instructions. If there is anyone in attendance that might require assistance in the evacuation of the building, please make themselves known. I invite the Deputy Chief Executive to give apologies.
Apologies from Councillor Booth, Councillor Simon Clark, who's online, Councillor Marchington, Councillor Claire Martin, Councillor Neal, Councillor Lundy, Councillor Watson, Councillor Whiting, Councillor Bales, Councillor James is online. Councillor Hall.
Agenda item 3, do members approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of July 2023, minute numbers 216 to 225 as a correct record? Item 4, do members have any interest to declare? Who's that? My husband. Okay, so since our last full council meeting, I've attended with Paul 30 events. Too many to mention individually, so a big thank you to all the organisers. We were made truly welcome by you all. Starting with today, we attended a dedication service at the new Faversham Crematorium, and yesterday had the great pleasure of opening Master's House in Sheerness, a project very close to my heart and an amazing resource to the young people of Sheffield. Over the summer, we also opened the Fenner Foundation Record Shop here in Sittingbourne and the Communication Cafe project run by the Song Signing Academy Choir, and believe me, that's a mouthful to say, at the Healthy Living Centre in Sheerness, as well as the Dreamscapes art exhibition, which showcased 8 female artists using our dreams as a theme for their works, is hosted at the Swale Media Arts Centre. And our very own Avenue Theatre held an international film festival last week, and I attended and presented the awards to their closing ceremony. We attended 2 local care home events, opening Pine Lodge's Summer Fete and starting Blair Park's Dementia Charity Walk. We also attended the launches of the Faversham Pop Festival, Merson Heart Project, as well as the Open Faversham History Week and the National Heritage Week celebration at the Criterion Theatre in Bluetown. We also joined walkers from Newington Historical Group launching their new World War I walk boards. Certainly worth a visit. And I just wanted to say, Swale was so good. The 2 civic events we attended recently were the ceremonial march past for HMS Kent, as it's being presented with the freedom of the County of Kent at County Hall, and the Royal British Legion's coronation dinner. In memory of Ken Ingleton, which had donated to the museum before he sadly passed away. Other summer events included the Laysdown and Deal Carnivals and the Sheffield Music Festival, as well as a couple of charity quiz nights and several out-of-borough mayors charity events. I will actually be holding my first borough charity mayors event on the 9th of December at the old Ford Wartime House here in East Street to raise money for my chosen charities and to support one of our precious, unique, very unique museums in the borough who are hosting the event. Invitations are being sent out this week, and I very much hope some of you are able to attend and support the event. So thank you for that. And just lastly, can we just take a moment to reflect on those affected by the events in Palestine and Israel? Thank you. Questions, agenda item 6, questions submitted by the public. No questions submitted by the public this evening. And on to agenda item 7, which are questions submitted by members. 5 questions have been received from the members. So I'm going to ask every member to ask their question in turn and then invite the chair of the relevant service committee to respond. And then I'll go back to the member to see if they have a supplementary question, and if so, invite the chair or the relevant service committee person to respond. And I want to make a point that the supplementary questions must be questions, just not statements. So I've got question number 1. It's come from Councillor Tyler, and it's to Councillor Tim Gibson. Councillor.
Mayor, my question is, the closure of the East Church Gap has been a monumental victory for the Al Sheppy, but there is great concern that the fly tipping that has been happening there has now been displaced to the Warden Bay site. Can leaders share monitored and any measurements taken to determine if the East Church Gap closure has had any negative impact elsewhere?
Councillor Gibson.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Noah, for that question. Can I just first of all join you in congratulating all of the agencies that were and remain involved in this operation. Cases like this one we've seen at East Church are very complex and involve a huge amount of evidence gathering and consideration. Whilst the operation remains live, we can confirm there's been no further dumping of illegal waste at 3rd Avenue. Legislation allows some disposal material under permitted conditions, which is regulated by the Environment Agency. We continue to monitor all sites where we believe that there is no permit in place or where conditions are not being met. Unfortunately, the stopping of illegal activity in one location can end up in movement of the issue elsewhere. This is why it's not always the correct thing to stop the activity immediately. We therefore need to gather evidence so that we can make a long-lasting legal intervention and prevent it moving elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor No, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to question 2, and I'd like to ask Councillor Leanne Moore to ask her question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is to the leader. Excluding those who pay council tax on their primary home address in Swale, and those who own and run holiday parks in Swale, can the leader tell me how many holiday home owners in Swale pay council tax to Swale Borough Council?
Councillor Gibson.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for the question. I understand that this question was also asked at the members' finance training back in July, and the answers shared with members in August. And so just to confirm the information already circulating, the total number of holiday homes and chalets registered for council tax in the borough is currently 1,400.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Moore, would you like to come back at all? No, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Julian Speed to the leader.
Madam Mayor, new nighttime parking charges were introduced by your administration earlier in the year. For both Q1 and Q2 2022 and for Q1, Q2 2023, What are the total figures for A, parking income, B, parking fines, and C, cost of enforcement?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Speed, for that question. I can forward the table that I've got here for you anyway, but I'll trot through that for you. So 2022-23, parking income in Q1 was £623,882, and in Q2 was £580,979. Parking fines in Q1 were £5,416, and Q2 £5,129. So PCN income was 134,026 and 132,270. I just realised I gave you I call those pounds, and there were actually fines, which are the 5,416 and 5,129. Cost of enforcement in Q1 was £101,849, and in Q2 £107,799. For 23-24, parking income in Q1 £630,650, Q2 £710,430. Parking fines issued were 4,723 in Q1, and in Q2 5,422. The income from that was 128,499 in Q1 and 146,842 in Q2. The cost of enforcement in Q1 was £120,173, and in Q2 £117,168. PCN income has no direct relationship to the number of PCNs issued in this period, as income will be collected at different stages of the process and from PCNs issued within an earlier time frame.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Speed, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I thank the leader for his response. So judging by those figures, if we look at Q2, for example, the increase in revenue as a result of nighttime parking charges being introduced was about 130. If my maths are right, about 30,000, 40,000 a month. Does the leader think this income outweighs the damage being done to the local economy? Since the introduction of nighttime charges, many small businesses have reported a significant decrease in footfall and revenue. Residents are already suffering from the cost of living crisis, and having to pay for parking on top of rising prices means they're going out less, hitting the nighttime economy. In Faversham, 7 or 8 businesses have closed down in the past year, with parking charges a significant factor. So my question is, if it's making such a small amount of money, is this justified given the damage to the local economy? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gibson.
Councillor Speed, for your supplementary question. In all of these matters, it's always a clearly for a balance judgment. And whilst there are those that would say that it has affected the business economy, there are many more that would say that is not the case. But I'm certainly happy to speak to Mr. Casella and get you a more in-depth report should you so desire. Thank you.
From Councillor Charlie Millen to the leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At a time where there is a clear increase in antisocial behaviour, young people openly telling elected members about the lack of places to go, does the leader agree with me? The planned KCC cuts to youth services across Swale is not only another example of austerity-obsessed Tories being way out of touch with young people, but also a huge blow to our borough as a whole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Miller, for that question. Yes, of course, I'm extremely concerned about the proposals by KCC to make cuts to this vital and important service particularly in the districts with the greatest need. Youth services during the 2010 austerity measures were significantly reduced, and we've seen the impact that this decision has made on the outcomes for young people in Swale. These young people have been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic too. They need more support, not less. Not only is antisocial behaviour an issue, but Swale has the second highest level of NEET in the county and high levels of childhood obesity. There's been evidence that good quality youth provision can make a positive and a significant difference to these outcomes. Whilst I welcome the introduction of family hubs, this should not be at the detriment to other vital services for young people. As a council, we have submitted a response to the consultation, and this has also been followed up by a letter to the Cabinet member from Councillor Richard Palmer, the chair of our Communities Committee. Thank you.
Councillor, have you got a supplementary?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next question is Councillor Ashley Wise to Valencia.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the leader like to extend an invitation to the recently self-described pro-motorist Prime Minister to witness firsthand the traffic misery drivers have to endure in Swale and the poor state of our roads, thanks to the Conservative-run KCC and years of Conservative government failure to invest in vital infrastructure while pushing demanding housing targets on us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wise. I'm really appreciating the exercise this evening. Yes, so thank you, Councillor Wise. And can I begin by saying that the Prime Minister would not be at the top of my list for an invite to our wonderful borough. Were I to have the Prime Minister's here, however, I would impress on him, as you rightly suggest, that the current central government housing targets are more demanding, and remind him of how overdue the new NPPF is. But I'll be honest with him, I'm sceptical that whatever comes forward from him will solve the multiple legacy problems of an inadequate national planning system. You will consider, incidentally, at the next full council meeting, the next steps in our local plan journey. Going back to our proposed encounter, that encourage the Prime Minister to read our consultation responses, proposed national planning reforms to the Lower Thames Gateway crossing proposals, where we're emphatic around the need for investment in the wider road network in Kent, the Kent's Local Transport Plan 5, where we champion the benefits and potential of increased rail freight, and I'd urge him to work his way through our successful active travel bids. I'd highlight that taken collectively, these seek to direct investment within our borough to a wide range of critical infrastructure. I will also talk to him about our commitment to the climate change and ecological emergency, our investment in EV charging points, in car clubs, in a multi-storey car park, and in the pedestrianisation of Fashion Town Centre, all with a view to showing the balance we strike within our own budgets in Swale, how committed we are to advocating for the right investment nationally. On his way back to Downing Street, I might just suggest that he calls by County Hall, has a chat about all those potholes.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Wise, would you like to come back?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor, just a quick supplementary. If the leader is generous enough to extend an invitation and the Prime Minister is generous enough to accept it, do you think that you might just advise that he leaves the helicopter at home and comes by car to actually see what we all have to put up with? Or he could come by high-speed rail, although his government doesn't seem so keen on that these days.
Councillor Gibson.
You've got supplementary, Councillor Wise. I wish I could think of a few paragraphs, but in short, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So that's the end of the questions this evening. So we're moving on to our agenda item 8, and our leader statement. So I will ask the leader to read his statement, and then I will ask the leaders of the opposition groups to respond in the usual way. Following that, I will invite members to respond to the leader's statement. Members invited to speak will have 3 minutes. This item has an overall time limit of 30 minutes to ensure broad fairness. I will try to invite responses from members of the administration and opposition groups in roughly equal numbers. This may mean that I deviate from the order in which members are indicated to wish to speak. Can I please remind all members that responses must be responses to the issues raised in the leader's statement. I invite Councillor Gibson now to give his verbal statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a while. In commencing my leader's statement this evening, as you will be aware, following the sad passing of Councillor Ken Ingleton, a by-election was held for the Minster Cliff seat. The election was won by Peter MacDonald of the Swale Independents. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor MacDonald back to this chamber. Welcome back, Peter. At the same time, I wish to inform you that Councillor Anne Kavanagh has now joined the Labour group. At a personal level, I had the privilege of attending the Seashells Centre on the Isle of Sheppey, and I had the honour of presenting a Royal Humane Society certificate to a young lady called Emma Page. Emma, one of the staff at Seashells, administered CPR to a man that she encountered whilst out driving. He'd fallen from his cycle and was laying in the roadside entangled in it. Emma stopped her car and approached the man, and it soon became apparent that the man's life was ebbing away, so she commenced CPR. The impressive citation on the RHF certificate read, "For restoring a man to life." And this feat was even more remarkable given that Emma had only completed her training the week before. At the ceremony, I was able to speak to the man whose life she saved, and whilst expressing his eternal gratitude to Emma, he also extolled the virtues of people being trained in CPR. For that reason alone, I would implore each and every one of you to consider accessing CPR training. It doesn't need to be anything particularly formal, and it's quite easy to access training online. There is very little these days not available on YouTube. Other channels, of course, are available. I also had the pleasure of holding our council's domestic violence, the Hidden Arms seminar, a multi-agency event that showcased the benefits of working collaboratively with external partners and organisations. The event demonstrated how this council is not reticent in leading the way in challenging arenas. And I cannot praise our officers highly enough and congratulate them for driving this agenda forward. What really struck me about this event was a clear integration of partnership working and a willingness for sharing support, advice and skill sets, and they're not insurmountable barriers to addressing a hidden arm, which I, for one, would never have considered prior to attending this event. I attended a seminar in Clacton. I know it's not in Kent, the theme of which was turning the tide, addressing health inequalities in seaside towns. The event had many eminent speakers, not least of which was Professor Sir Chris, next slide please, Whitty, the government's chief medical officer. In Sir Chris's brief, he asserted that even after adjusting for well-recognised factors such as age, smoking and deprivation, there remains a coastal excess of disease, life expectancy, healthy life expectancy and disability-free life expectancy, all are considered lower in coastal areas, and the mortality ratios for a range of conditions, including preventable mortality, are significantly high too. In terms of our own borough, Sheerness, there are similar drivers towards a clustering of poor health. And there is a direct correlation in health-related matters with housing, employment, educational opportunities, and low personal aspirations impacting on the concentration of deprivation and ill health. Nationally, many coastal communities, of course, were created around a single industry, including previous versions of tourism, fishing, or port work, that have since moved on, leading to employment is often scarce, low paid, or seasonal. The result, of course, is that continuum of the cycle of deprivation. I am pleased to say that at that event, feedback to me as leader of this council was extremely positive in terms of praise for our health lead, Councillor Angela Harrison, and our officer, Charlotte Hudson, for their proactive drive, enthusiasm, and dare I say, forthright approach in engaging with partners and unashamedly seeking support and funding to address the important issue of health inequalities in our borough. So thank you both very much. With the cost of living crisis continuing in an unrelenting way, and continue to put many under increased financial pressure, it has never been more important for local people to be able to access the resources that they may need. To assist with this, we've carried out a series of local events across the borough under the umbrella of our One Swale Roadshow. The roadshow has provided a perfect opportunity for organisations, including Citizens Advice, Department of Works and Pensions, and our very own council, to offer support and advice to those who receive it. Advice on accessing the Household Support Fund, health checks, emergency fuel and food, finances, and much, much more. Were all provided and very well received. I attended the formal ribbon cutting ceremony at Master's House, and met representatives from Launch It. There are a group of charities who work to empower young people to fulfil their potential by providing the workspace, mentoring and training needed to start a business. This has created an enterprise centre where 18 to 30-year-olds on the Isle of Sheppey can get help bring their business dreams to life and move towards fulfilling their ambitions and aspirations. I have to say, Councillor Bonny, and you yourself, Madam Mayor, together with our officers, have done an excellent job in having a vision to make this a reality. It was good to hear the refurbishment was carried out by a local firm who installed new lifts, new suite kitchens and toilets. And of course, the building's carbon footprint has been significantly reduced by installing an air source heat pump, upgraded windows and insulation throughout the building. Wilborough Council has also installed a pirate ship themed play area in Beachfields. This was done in collaboration with Sheerness Town Council, who undertook consultations with the local community and provided half of the funds. The new play area has been installed in Beachfield Sandpit to replace a castle that was sadly burned down last year. The colourful bespoke design man of war multi-activity unit includes a zip line, a slide, fireman's pole, rope ladders, manufactured from durable weatherproof materials created using recyclable plastic. The council has also submitted a bid by the PCC for government safer streets funding to assist in driving down neighbourhood crime, antisocial behaviour, violence against women and girls, and improving the safety of the public spaces for all. I'm hoping to be able to bring news on the outcomes of that bid to our next full council meeting. As a council, we have raised concerns about Kent County Council's proposals to change youth services across the borough, and the council has written to Kent's cabinet member for community and regulatory services the residents' opposition to cutting externally commissioned youth services as part of the proposals to create new family hubs to support children and families. And to finish on a lighter note, people of Swale have been invited to help name Swale's new fleet of 24 waste collection and 4 sweeper vehicles that will be working across the borough from March 2024. Now, our Environment Committee Chair, Rich Lehman, is particularly hopeful that we'll have some fun, creative and wonderful new names for our vehicles. Thank you all very much.
That's a good something. Then I'd like to invite Councillor Bowen to give his response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I thank the leader of his statement and also for giving me sight of it in advance so I could write a response. I genuinely and really do appreciate it. I'll keep it brief this evening, but have a few observations on the statement. I also offer my congratulations to Councillor MacDonald on his recent by-election win and welcome back to the chamber. Group make-ups have shifted in the last 2 weeks after the by-election and as a result of the crossing of the floor by Councillor Kavanagh, who joins the Labour group because they are a better fit for her. Whilst we have had members across the floor leave groups to become independent, that is a fact of political life. But I'm not aware of a new councillor swapping sides within 5 months of the election to the party that became third of that ward. I wonder what the residents think. From personal experience of having to administer CPR, I 100% echo how valuable it is. These skills can and will save lives, the most precious thing we all have. And I've had to carry out CPR for real. It's something I will never, ever forget. But I'm really grateful for knowing how to do it. Congratulations also to Emma Page for her award. I welcome the leader's commentary on what he's been up to and where he's been and agree with him that domestic violence, the hidden harm, put teeth back in, is a great and hugely needed area for this county to get involved with, and long may that continue. Also, the One Swale Road shows I think are a good idea. Well done for submitting, and I look forward to hearing more about the PCC bid for the Safer Streets funding. However, a list of where we have been, etc., isn't enough. We're now 5 months since the election, and I feel that as a council, we do not have a long-term plan for where we want to get to. What are we going to do to provide the service to residents? How are we going to achieve that? We seem to roll from one event to another and are reactive rather than, in my opinion, being proactive for our residents. A ship to get to its destination is only as good as its rudder, and I'm not sure the rudder is pointing towards any destination at this time. In the coming weeks and months, this changes. I hope this changes, and as the leader knows, I and the other groups are more than welcome to help with this. But also we will challenge and raise issues we think need raising, which is what I'm doing right here. But I appreciate we're all on a learning curve. After all, Rome wasn't built in the day, but Birmingham and others fell very quickly. And I'm not saying, for instance, we are a Birmingham in waiting, but we do need to be planning accordingly so we don't become Birmingham. Finally, as you finished about the vehicle naming exercise, I think this is a fun initiative that has certainly sparked comments on social media. And I have so far heard a few, amongst others, and appreciate that these are tongue-in-cheek examples maybe for consideration. Crash Gordon, the Flying Dustman, Beating on by Garbage, and my personal favourite so far, Dustbin Bieber. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, councillor Bowen. Councillor Perkin, would you like to give your response to the statement, please?
Thank you. Yeah, and my thanks to the leader for providing me with a copy of the speech as well this afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to also welcome Councillor McDonald back to the chamber and to wish Councillor Kavanagh the best in her new political home. On behalf of myself and the Liberal Democrat group, I'd like to echo the leader's comments and applaud the dedication and bravery shown by Emma Page in administering CPR and to underscoring the importance of accessible life-saving training. CPR, especially if administered immediately after cardiac arrest, can double or triple a person's chances of survival outside of the hospital. We also appreciate the collaborative efforts showcased at the Domestic Violence and Hidden Harm seminar. Officers at our council continue to work tirelessly to reduce the impacts of domestic violence, something that sadly still impacts so many people, but especially so many women and girls in Swale. When in the Deputy Cabinet position for health and wellbeing, I was often inspired by Councillor Harrison and Charlotte Hudson's drive to reach out to underserved communities in the borough, and I'm glad to hear the continued collaborative work that the council does with partners to reduce health inequalities. In the face of the ongoing cost of living crisis, the One Swale roadshows are commendable for providing crucial support to local residents, but I wondered if the leader would be more open about the numbers of residents reached by those roadshows and the ways in which they were helped. This could be helpful for future shaping outreach according to need, and also to understand the successes of such events. Of course, we should all be pushing for a borough and indeed a national picture where none of these services are needed, but I continue to be thankful to the volunteer organisations that dedicate so much time to supporting people in Swale when they need it. I'm delighted to see the Pirate Ship and Beachfields and Masters House open. These successes, alongside the Safer Streets funding, demonstrate a commitment to community wellbeing and an investment in our young people. Myself, those changes to the services by Kent County Council and emphasise the need to prioritise the support of children and families. Our thanks to the leader for writing, but additionally, we also need to be very concerned about the swathing cuts to early years provision that run alongside the youth funding changes. And we urge all councillors to be aware of potential closures to children's centres in their wards and to fight for these crucial services when threatened. Lastly, the leader's statement emphasised some of the good work of the councillors, and I wanted to acknowledge another local councillor. I wanted to acknowledge another local their work and congratulate Fashion Town Council's Josh Rollins for reaching the final of the National Association of Local Councils Young Councillor of the Year Awards. Politics in general benefits from diverse representation, and his work being recognised as a credit to local government in Swale. Thank you.
Councillor Perkin, I now invite other members to give a response. I think this is going. That's a lot. Who's first?
I think it was me.
The consultation on the youth services, blah, 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 blah. I have been keeping an eye on the KCC website for that consultation that was before about closing of buildings, children's centres. I've actually seen and heard nothing. So I'd just like to ask the leader as well to keep an eye on this. And next time you're at Kent leaders meeting, blah, 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 can you just give him a nudge and say we're waiting here, because it is important. People are just living on the edge. People, well, I know people who are looking for other jobs because they just don't know. And the bottom line is it's our residents who are suffering while all this uncertainty is going on. Thank you for what you said about me and Charlotte. You never told us. Now, I went to the one Swale. And I had a chat with, Southern housing lady, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, yes, that's Stevie Pettit, our water and fuel poverty advisor worker. I've got one of these hygrometer things, and I raised it with him in Southern housing. She said, so I wrote to I think these would be great in all of our social housing properties. And Paul Hackett went, well, yeah, great. And he issued a directive that they all be put into the social housing properties. So I thought, oh, I better get one. So then I put on the hygrometer how much they were, because if you were selling them on, you'd want to make something for the charity. I'll tell you afterwards. But you simply put it in, there's a little stand there, you put it in those, and there's a little green dot. And if it goes out the green, those pennies, but you know, for the cost of this, which I just thought, well, it's like it ain't rocket science, is it? So Southern's already doing it, and I think that I'm going to ask for another couple so that we can get our housing sector important people, Glyn, Pritchard, and Co, to actually flag them up when they go around
Councillor Harrison.
inspect private properties that are damaged and mould. So yes, there was a benefit, certainly. I found it really useful. And when I went with Councillor Vaughan, there was a good number of people there. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Tucker,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly concur with the importance of CPR, and certainly should be taught in schools rather than subjects like offshore drift and things like that. I'm sure Councillor Neil would concur that along with DFIB, people have got much better chances of surviving heart attacks and such like. I also agree with his comments, and I will speak as a Conservative about the cuts to youth services and being a youth worker for over 10 years in my younger days. It's encouraging, though, that there are young people in this chamber observing these meetings, and I think that's a fantastic thing, that young people are interested in politics and what's going on and cuts to their services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker. And I'm going to, just as an ex-midwife and nurse, CPR training is absolutely essential. And I have unfortunately had to do many CPRs and a lot of more babies. So, you know, it's such a thing that all of us really should take on board. So thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the leader for bringing up the obvious investment through the play area at the Salem Pit beach fields for Sheerness. Very grateful to both, I suppose I should say, I'm very honoured to be Sheerness Town Council's chair at the moment, and I very much value the partnership work between Swale and Sheerness Town Council. But I do want to actually say that we shouldn't ignore the reason why that had to happen in the first place. I'd like to ask that we go forward holding our policing much scrutiny as possible with regards to how our communities are suffering through the lack of policing input at the moment. I know it's not Swale's particular remit, but I would like to hope that our lobbying power and the small input we do have with Kent Police, we're actually making sure that our residents' voices are heard and that they'd like a better deal out of their extra 7% that the Crime Commissioner, Conservative Crime Commissioner, decided to charge them on their council tax on the last update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester. Councillor Richard Palmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just I was a former paramedic, and just to go back to the thing of CPR, yes, it's great having paramedics, but if the person's dead before they arrive, it's CPR that will keep them alive. And also, as the leader was making this statement, I then recalled that we actually provided funds and grants for defibrillators to support the community during the last period of coalition administration, and it's early defibrillation that is a key to survival and certainly increases people's survival chance. So that's an example of a coalition working together to support our community and parish councils and town councils. Thank you.
Action, councillor Palmer. Is there anybody else wanting to speak? Okay, that's no. Councillor Gibson, would you like to come back?
Yeah, I need a bit more exercise, Madam Mayor, thank you. So I'll try and take them in order. CPR, again, you all know my background, and it is so easy when you're on a fire engine, you get off, and there's at least another 4 that are there to assist you and support you in doing that. But as Councillor Bowen said, it's a very lonely place, and I know Councillor Palmer's been there too, when you're on your own, and there is no professional help coming anytime soon. I've been there, seen it, done it, and it's not a great feeling, but it's something that we get on with. As I say, hence my comments where I implore you all to at least have a look at how you can assist somebody, because you never know when you're going to save somebody's life. And I'm sure that Emma, when she turned around the corner that morning, taking her son to football, that was the last thing she ever thought she'd be facing. So that age old thing of you never know what's around the corner. In terms of the ship, Councillor Bowen, we're pleased to know that we're quite a advanced stage with the corporate plan. And again, the fire service background, I think everything can happen in seconds. Certainly when you're thrust into the leadership position, you realise that can't be the case. You can't just do it immediately and get it out there in weeks. So hopefully our next meeting, I'll be able to give a decent update on progress, and certainly in our meetings, our leaders group meetings, right across the piece, I'll be able to fill you in a bit more there. But of course, it's budget options, and that's not of our doing. That is of your party's, national party's doing, in cutting back our budgets year on year on year on year. So we certainly can't be blamed for that, and we make no apologies for absolutely scrutinising every penny. Every penny's a prisoner, and we'll get there. I can say on the night, I don't see us being in Birmingham. I don't see us being a Thurrock. I don't see us being a Woking, because we haven't been advised by the government to invest in things that have gone down the pan. And I know Birmingham's was a slightly different issue, but that's the concern. So we will be frugally, fiscally frugal, and we'll make sure we do the best for the people of this borough. The vehicle naming.
30 seconds.
Vehicle naming. Yeah, it's good to see that earlier provision. Yes, I will take that up. Congratulations to Josh. Sorry. And yes, I will keep an eye on children's services. Young persons in the chamber. I must admit now, to a non-pecuniary interest. That's my grandson. He's a big Labour man. He was out on the dog catch with us. Right, so and I just can't knock the guy down. He's done his own work, and he insisted on coming here tonight, so I apologise for that. And Council Worcester holding the police to account. Yes, we will indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So agenda item 9, we move on to, is the next item on the agenda is the allocation of committee seats. Members confirm they have received the follow papers. Yep. I'd like Councillor Gibson, sorry, to introduce the report and propose recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really do need the exercise. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. I shan't take any of your time with it. If there are any questions, don't direct them this way. Joe, they're sitting right behind me. So if the bullets are coming this way, I'll be diving and making sure that they hit Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I'll invite Councillor Bowen to second and ask whether they wish to speak or reserve their right.
I think that I second the recommendation. I'll reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Are there any other members that wish to speak? Okay, so that's no. Ask the members to vote on the recommendations. Oh, Speaker, sorry, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the events occurring as I speak across the world that are an attack on people's rights and democracy, I think it is vital that we maintain the highest safeguards to our democracy. This includes committee seats and political balance at Swale and every council across these shores. No group leader likes to give away seats, and every group leader likes to take them and to be given them. And that's what happens after an election or by-election. That is part of political life. Like that or not, that is our democracy. And I will always uphold that when so many people across this world we call home do not have that privilege. No doubt in the coming months and years there'll be other papers like this. So for now, these are the committees and members of the said committees. I second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowe. We're now going to ask members to vote on the recommendations with a show of hands. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hand clearly. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Oh. No one abstaining or not in favour at all? Just double check. Understand. Thank you, councillors. Now we've got an urgent motion, I think a rather important one, so I allowed it to be submitted late because I think all of us are very concerned about this. The urgent motion has been received as set out on the agenda in accordance with section 3.1.3.1.14 of the Constitution. I have agreed that this is an urgent motion and so can be debated tonight. Councillor Bowen, I invite you to propose this motion. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I stop, can I just check, do I need to read the motion? So this doesn't count as my 5 minutes. It hasn't been passed with my actual proposal, it's about 5 minutes.
As we have time, read the motion and then have your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the motion, the pressure on general practice and primary care services is widely recognised and reported. This arises from a number of supply side and demand factors, some with roots going back many years. On the supply side, there is a national shortage of general practitioners, GPs, as recruitment fails to keep pace with numbers leaving the profession or reducing their workload in the interest of their own health and life-work balance. Inevitably, that shortfall is not evenly distributed, and some areas are now more challenged to attract GPs either to existing vacancies or to establish new provision. In England, the ratio of GPs per 1,000 patients is currently around 0.75 and 0.58 full-time equivalent. Kent and Medway, the ratio is 0.62, 0.449 full-time equivalent. In September 2022, the ratio in Swale was 0.53, or 0.39 full-time equivalent. Love numbers. This figure has worsened since 2022, with more GP surgeries closing and existing GPs struggling to recruit. This figure is an average for Swale, but in some areas the ratio is as low as 0.14 per 1,000 patients. GPs have the central role, particularly in diagnosis and referral. The GP-patient ratio is a strong indicator of relative pressure on access to services. Without access to GP services, additional pressure is put on already stretched hospitals. Swale currently has the highest incidence of obesity in Kent, and the numbers attending hospital with obesity-related issues has grown in the past 5 years. Population of Swale increased by 11.7% between 2011 and 2021, from 135,800 in 2011 to around 151,700 in 2021. This is a larger increase than both the national average, 6.6%, and the South East average, 7.5%, and yet the number of GPs has fallen in this time. House prices in Swale have risen by an average of 7.7% in the last 12 months, with the average price paid for a property in Swale being in July 2023, 334,000. Cost of living in the South East and Swale in particular is one of the reasons given for GPs not locating to Kent. The council agrees that Leader writes to the Secretary of State for Health, CC to Swale MPs, asking him to work with the council to provide innovative, funded solutions to encourage more GPs to locate in Swale. This could include financial assistance. Given to the council GP to assist with housing for a fixed period. Now I can move. So the motion before us highlights a critical problem in our healthcare system, the strain on general practice and primary care services. We are witnessing the consequences of a situation where demand consistently outpaces supply, and it is our duty to seek innovative and funded solutions to reverse this trend. A couple of points before I go into the main thrust of my proposal. I have read comments from people on the article published on Kent Online. I thank them for picking up the story. A lot of them suggest GPs earn over 100,000 to indeed 150,000 a year. According to prospects.ac.uk, junior doctors in foundation year 1 earn 29,000. A doctor in specialist training starts from 39.5. And whilst GPs earn more with a salary of between 62,000 and 94, depending on service, not the 150,000 some think they earn. Add to that the ratios we talk about in the motion, GPs responsible for the health and well-being of the people they serve. This is a huge responsibility for a salary that probably some of us in this chamber earned or earns with less responsibilities that affect so many. I was talking to a GP last night about this, and he said, if you were a GP, what incentive is there for you to come here and have that number of patients, or go somewhere else in the country and have far less number of patients, therefore able to provide a more personal service? We also need to consider the GPs themselves and their own well-being. A sick GP is no good for the patients under them, and their mental health and well-being is of also huge importance. I'm minded of the TV programme Doc Martin, a GP at the heart of the community and involved, albeit grumpily, with the community. That no doubt appeals to some GPs, whilst others look for the busy areas of cities where they can specialise and progress. We seem to sit in the middle, and of nobly attractive proposition. As the motion accurately outlines, Swale faces a unique set of challenges that have exacerbated this issue. The shortage of GPs in our region is a concern that we cannot ignore. We are well below the national average with only 0.53 GPs per 1,000 patients in Swale. This shortage, further aggravated by GP surgeries closing and recruitment difficulties, has left our community grappling for accessible healthcare. It is a situation that places immense pressure on not only the quality of care we receive, but also on our local hospitals. The importance of our GPs and our healthcare system cannot be overstated. They are our first point of contact for health concerns, providing critical diagnosis and referrals that guide our journey through the healthcare system. The GP-patient ratio serves as a clear indicator of the relative pressures on access to services. In Swale, this ratio has reached alarming levels. This in turn hampers our ability to address growing health concerns such as the increasing incidence of obesity-related issues in our region. We must also acknowledge the changing dynamics of our community. Swale's population has grown significantly in recent years, far outpacing both the national and regional averages. Despite this surge in residents, the number of GPs in our area has dwindled, leaving us ill-equipped to meet the healthcare needs of our growing population. The rising cost of living, particularly in Swale, I think is significant deterrent for GPs considering relocation. The housing market has soared with an average price of $334,000 in July, making it increasingly challenging for healthcare professionals to make this their home. We cannot let financial constraints deter dedicated doctors from serving our communities. We must do something. The motion calls for the leader to write to the Secretary of State of Health with our local MPs in the loop, seeking collaboration to address this issue. We must work hand in hand to devise innovative funded solutions to incentivise GPs to relocate to Swale. I joined Swale back in 2009 and have seen many motions in that time. Some get cross-chamber support. And I'm minded to a comment that Honorary Alderman Roger Trullo once said about the motion regarding Chinese lanterns that Councillor Burt proposed and I seconded a few years ago. He said, if a motion is good, it will be supported. This motion is a combination from all of the group leaders here at Swale. Whilst I'm proposing, Councillor Gibson seconded, any of us were happy to carry out these tasks. And if it were possible, all of the group leaders would be seconding this motion. This is the first for this council since I joined and shows we have a common ground on this important issue. I also want to thank the CEO for the work which he's done in compiling this first class. In conclusion, this motion is a call to action, a commitment to the well-being of our community and our hopes that every resident in Swale has access to quality healthcare. I urge you all to support this motion. The health and well-being of our community depend on our collective actions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. So for clarity, I'm going to get Councillor Gibson to second the motion first, and then followed by all the other group leaders in order. I'll call them in order, and then any other members that want to speak following that. Okay. So Councillor Gibson, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish there was anything in life that was as easy to support as this. I chair the PPG group down at Chestnut Surgery, as you know, you're on the committee there. We've got 10,361 patients and 2.5 doctors. And when I say half, people are probably wondering which half it is. And I'm sure from time to time, those doctors, as colleagues, wonder which half they are, being stretched to the limit to provide a service for us. Councillor Bourne mentioned the average pay, and at our surgery, it was £80,000 last year. But that said, these are people who have worked their socks off to get to the positions where they are, and they're working an inordinate amount of time to get there. We've lost surgeries in Tenham. We've lost a surgery on Canterbury Road. We've got surgeries in this borough in special measures. We really are fundamentally struggling. And again, I suppose I should declare perhaps a non-pecuniary interest. My own niece is a GP. She trained in Newcastle and she stayed there. Born and bred in Kent. And I think it's shameful as Yorkshireman living here. Her partner has done exactly the same thing. And what is even more galling now is because of the poor pay that they're receiving, they're looking at relocating to Australia. All of the money, the investment that we've put into them, and I've made that point to them unashamedly, we believe in this country and going off to Australia. And why? Because simply, we don't value these people. If we did, we'd give them a fair wage and make it attractive. And we don't value our residents. Otherwise, again, if we did, we'd try and attract those people here to give them the health care that we so desperately need. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bourne.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I'd like Councillor Baldock to speak on the.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't take long because there's been perfectly good points made that I fully endorse. I'd like to thank Councillor Byron for bringing this up. I think the right thing to do. I think it demonstrates the fact that 5 group leaders supported this. I think that shows that, you know, we have worked differently in Swale. We are trying to work differently in Swale, working without being blinkered by party colours all the time. Sometimes I'll have the general election coming up sometime. It does, that doesn't necessarily lead to conducive debate. But I think we should all remember that in here there's 47 of us, and we're all working for our residents and our communities, and we shouldn't get too partisan because out there they aren't impressed. Of course, one of the most important things about this deplorable lack of GPs is the fact that we can't take it into account in our local plan. It tells us we've got to have infrastructure first. We need all these doctors, we need everything else that we need for a local plan. If we go and say we've got insufficient doctors, we have to struggle to prove that that means that we can't meet the government's targets. It's a bit like when they stopped us building houses in Iwade because the road can't cope with it, but then tell us we're still going to keep meeting the stupid target, so we've got to let housing go elsewhere. You know, it's just a nonsensical situation, but at the heart of that is the fact we cannot provide the services that people need at the rate that the houses are being built. I think it was Councillor Bowen pointed out, we've lost GPs over the last 7 years. The number of GPs lost, the housing numbers keep climbing. The government wants us to be able to deliver a local plan. They have to take action to make sure that the infrastructure that our residents need, including GPs, is in place. And at the moment, they're not. So this letter is a start of that, and of course we make that point all the time. But yeah, absolutely, GP provision needs to be addressed. It is absolutely critical.
Councillor Baldock, Councillor Perkin, would you like to speak on the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, I also won't speak for. I believe that there's a lot of people in the chamber that have a lot more detail and knowledge than myself. So I'm glad to have been able to work on what is a cross-party motion with all the other group leaders. It's a subject that I'm sure all of us have heard about on doorsteps over and over again. And it's absolutely incumbent on all of us as local representatives to come together where necessary in a non-partisan way to be able to advocate for our community and to advocate for better for them. So I'm really pleased to be part of a motion where all agree being part of it. I will know that collaborative work continues for our residents.
Thank you, councillor Perkins. Councillor Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Perkins just stole what I was going to say. So I'm very happy to second the motion. The arguments are clearly there, and I will just echo Councillor Perkins' words. But I'm very happy with the collaborative way the groups have been working together since the start of the new political term, and I hope that continues. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lynn. So I'm going to open it up now to other members. I hope I've got everybody, because everyone put their hands up at the same time, but I'll start with councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Lehman. It has taken an awful long time, but a born again Christian. It's took years. It's on this particular issue, but we've got there at long last. And a couple of points that Madam Mayor, on the specifics in terms of housing, the government did actually bring in this thing called First Housing, a discount scheme, which developers could allocate discounted properties to, I can't remember what they call it, I call it a key worker, which would be GP. Unfortunately, for Swale, it will take a while to come through the planning system in terms of 106. So that is quite a long way down the line. We need something now for people who have applied to work in our borough, somewhere to live. So yes, we can acknowledge, and when you're right, we can acknowledge that some things have been done. It's just that, well, actually it's too little too late, but we need more, and we need it now, not further down the line. I think I could talk long and hard about I'm all right, Jack, pull up the ladder, no role models and all the rest of it. The internal market is affecting GPs and GP surgeries in this borough. When I say the internal market, I mean NHS property, NHS estates, NHS IT, NHS this, NHS that, NHS the other, and they've all got to make a profit. So when you go into an NHS property, because you haven't got a choice, because your particular surgery was being sold, and by the way, the officers are still looking in that area. They haven't given up. But in the meantime, Tenham surgeries operating out of Sittingbourne Memorial. I'm not going to say they're being charged an arm and a leg because I'll probably get sued, but it's something similar. And some of the other NHS property fees that are being charged to our GP surgeries, some of them have put their prices up to GP surgeries 73%. How would you feel if your rent went up 73%? It's bad enough what it's going up now. That's what this internal market is doing to our surgeries. You know, I'm really surprised anyone wants to be a GP these days, and I'm even more surprised anyone wants to run a surgery. They are hampering left, right, and centre. But I'm sorry, we do have some fantastic ones in the bar. I don't know how you do it, Alistair. I really do not. Got some very good patients. So, you know, there are issues that the government can
30 seconds, Councillor Harrison.
There are also issues which communities can do to help out. But one of what take another 10 on. A goodly part of the health inequalities comes down to no role models, no community. There is no such thing as society. Isn't that what she said? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Harrison. I've got councillor Terry.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I've got an interest to declare on this one. I think fortunately that, well, perhaps unfortunately that not the direct Swale Borough Council funding issue. I don't really have to declare a continuing one. There are a few points that I'd like to make. First of all, is the effect of deprivation on workload. As the leader alluded to earlier, there's a big effect of that on health. Practices do get a weighting in the payments that are made depending on their deprivation scores, but that doesn't really adequately reflect the intensity and complexity the deprivation brings. There's a headline statistic of about a 10-year difference in life expectancy between the most deprived areas and the least deprived areas, but that's underpinned by years of poor health, mental illness, substance abuse, and those aren't easy things to deal with. They make the GPs work much harder and more stressful. So working in a more affluent area becomes instantly more attractive, and there would be need for a much more significant incentive for GPs to attract underdoctored areas. There is a weighting in the payments that GPs get for this, but I think it's something that urgently needs revision. And I think if you write a letter, that's something to point out, that actually the weighting doesn't affect the workload, reflect the workload that the difference in deprivation makes. Second point, there's very much a domino effect. It's both between practices and within practice. If your neighbourhood practice folds, the next practice in line really comes under a lot more stress. And likewise, if there's a resignation in the practice or two, as in the case of my practice at the moment, the remaining doctors are at much higher risk of burnout. The ICB needs to be much more proactive in supporting struggling practices, not just come down on them like a ton of bricks when they need improvement. Be listening to them, speaking to them, find out what's going, what pressures they're under. That doesn't really happen at the moment. And I think a much more proactive ICB to actually understand that the health of practices is important. Even outwardly successful practices may be on much thinner ice than may be apparent. And there's no sense of any interest or support from the ICB. Thirdly, premises funding. We want a decent place to work in, but even when Section 106 money is available, the current rules state that it can only be used to fund 66% of the cost of an improvement. The rest has to come from the GPs, in the case of owner-occupied buildings or other sources. Now, there's been talk of years, for years, about a revision to the premises cost directions to actually look at much better funding, preferably 100% funding of GP practices. But it's something that urgently needs to happen. And it actually is preventing us using the 106 money for the benefit of our residents because of these rules. The ability, and I think that's even more the case in the current climate with construction costs and interest rates going up. The extension to our surgery cost 1.2 million for 7
30 seconds.
Rooms. It's not expensive.
Important.
Finally, I'll put it, the viability in practice as well can be very much affected by competition, and I echo. But that actually is competition, not just in the areas that she illustrated, but actually between practices. The ability of a practice to register out of area means that sometimes patients can choose to register with more successful practice nearby. But again, it tends to be the more affluent, mobile, and less sick patients who will make it and take advantage of that. Also, some practices have contracts awarded to them, which for other services, and those are somewhat inequitably distributed. And again, will go to the practices that are successful, have the ability to bid for these things. And that can hugely distort the ability of those other practices to recruit. And there are practices not a million miles from Swale, which act almost like a black hole when it comes to sucking in resources and doctors. And it's very difficult to compete against that sort of level of funding that comes from essentially outside the practice. And the ICB, I think, have an important role in actually looking at the overall health economy and to take a much more holistic view of it. And remember that in any system that depends on competition, there will be losers as well as winners. And when the losers are practice, the losers actually becomes the patients that those practice serves. So I think there are some important issues there that I hope could be included in any letter that the leader writes. Okay.
Really stretched then. It's unbelievable now. So, you know, to see what's actually happening is quite devastating to watch. So, and nothing's been reflected in how more expensive it is to live in Swale now. You used to get a London waiting if you worked in London. They need to look at things like that to get people working. So I would pass on to now to Councillor Winklis. No, Councillor Palmer, sorry. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I'll try and follow that, but I think I would urge the letter as well to be copied to both our ICBs and to highlight some of the points that Councillor Gould made. However, I tend to disagree a bit with Councillor Baldock because he says there's nothing the planning system can do, but I believe the NPPF has driving through it the principle of sustainable development. Well, it's about thinking about the future and the present population. If we keep building a massive houses and saying to the government, we will do this and keep doing it, we are adding to the problem. So as we're saying here, there's a problem, we are creating some of that problem with the way we tackle the planet. Isn't it strange? You can have a grampian condition, which is put in place for a road or a roundabout to stop a development being progressed until such time as that development or that road is in place. Which is fine, and no one thought that would be acceptable until the regional council in the Grampians challenged and went to court over it and won. So maybe we should set an example, take some competent legal advice, and start having a swell condition and saying enough is enough. You're trying to put too much here. It is unsustainable development. And we need some sort of condition in place until the GP ratio has come back to normal or the average for the UK. Thank you.
That's right. So, Councillor Bonnet.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm totally in favour of this motion. I mean, with the ever increasing development that's taking place in this borough, it's certainly not got enough doctors' surgeries. I have residents in my ward continually ringing me up or emailing me, having a job to get appointments in Milton Regis, and we have 2 doctors' surgeries in Milton in that area. So I'm totally behind this, and I hope that the MP, once I understand he's retiring next general election, he will take this up, or when we get a new MP, dare I say, hopefully on our side, a Labour MP, or this City Ward and Shepherd constituency, we can push this. Thank you.
Councillor Bonnet.
Okay, I'll try and cram all of this in. Following on from what Councillor Gould has said, it's not just about the number of GPs. The main issue is around having enough space to accommodate them. And this is something I've been rattling on about to the ICB for some time. In fact, I must have got up their nose so much. They've done an estates review of community services, which, to be honest, was quite poorly responded to by Swale. Now, community services doesn't cover GP facilities, but what the community services review concluded was that it don't need any more space for Swale, which is quite frankly disgraceful. When you look at GPs, it's having the space for a consulting room. And as Alistair said, it's about having enough surgeries, but enough space within existing surgeries for them to expand. So East Street is a classic example. They can get hold of the staff, they can get hold of the GPs and the nurses, but they have nowhere to put them. They are wholly reliant on the Bell Centre developer coming forward to deliver that scheme. That scheme is currently up for sale. There is not a Captain Hill's chance new surgery being delivered in any short space of time in foreseeable future whilst it's up for sale. There is no certainty of delivery as far as I can see, standing at that from a distance. So that's the first thing, is the considerable risk on the partners, the GP partners. This is a massive requirement. So you've been talking about their wages. They're expected to find considerable equity And over a long period of time to put into a new surgery, that just does not stack up. The other thing is what is a safety valve? If you can't get to your GP, you can't get an urgent appointment, you're put into the bucket of community services, which for in Sittingbourne, there is no prescribing person at minor injuries. It is minor injuries. It is not urgent. They call it urgent care in Sittingbourne, but it's not. It is a minor injuries only. So you're forced to go to Faversham or the Isle of Sheppey. Now, if you live in Sittingbourne or the rural villages, it's a long way to go to Sheppey, and especially if you then end up in Medway and have the misfortune to get redirected to Medway. It is imperative that as the largest town in the borough, we have a prescribing facility, GP facility, so that becomes a proper urgent care centre in Sittingbourne. But as I said, they don't need any new premises, was the conclusion from the ICB. And the ICB, when they started this piece of work, said that Sittingbourne and the villages had a population of 40-odd thousand. They got that fundamentally wrong until I pointed that out. Now that is beyond frustrating. And you should all be aware of that this is the ICB work in progress. Now, they corrected it and finally came to a conclusion. So if you give me the courtesy of a couple of minutes. So it is really important that it's not just the number of GPs, but it's where we put them and getting those facilities in. And also the historic split across Swale, we have 2 MPs. And also because we had effectively 2 CCGs previously, that's split, but also from a patient perspective, and I should declare I'm a governor on the East Kent Hospitals Trust because this is my hobby horse, so all intelligence gathered from all sides would be useful. But what is clear is the hospitals are saying patients are turning up sicker at the door. They are overwhelmed. Now, unfortunately, over the last month, I've had nothing but a long list of people who told me about the issues in Medway Maritime Hospital and the poor care that they've received. And I'm starting to put a list together. I'm not a governor there, but we will feed that back through the committees. And I think that is really important because that lack of GPs is having a fundamental impact on our hospital services. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. I fully agree with what's in this motion. I think it makes complete sense and there's no surprise there. I think everyone in the chamber thinks that. I think we've got to remember that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm going to take an example from 2017 from Utterdale Borough Council in Cumbria. They worked in partnership with the NHS and the local housing association to provide a home for a newly qualified GP. And they advertised it as learn the trade in a rural community. That rural community had a population of 25,000, so about twice the size of Sheerness, give or take, population-wise. And believe me, it didn't look that rural when you look at the photos of the area. It's like Sheerness Docks. That was a successful project. They now have 2 former empty dwellings that they use for GP accommodation for newly qualified GPs to have them in the area. And the ones that started there in 2017 have gone and bought a house down the road, having married and settled down with their children. Excellent project. We may not have the capital to do it here now, but we might be able to sway it either out of the Department for Health or, if necessary, DLUC. I'm sure they could get back some of that 6 billion that they paid back to the Treasury. I think we've also got to have a sense of balance. We keep saying no more housing until we've got the GP figures right. We also have to take into account the impacts of the wrong sort of housing and insecure housing on health outcomes and the levels that they increase deprivation. We have got old council housing stock, and it's the same across Kent, which is no longer fit for purpose. The stocks that were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s that have damp and mould issue built into them as we try to improve them, those have an impact on. We need to be regenerating that. That's why so many councils are looking at the stock that they currently have or the stock that they transferred and doing regen projects on it and increasing the density and using it for affordable housing. We have to bear in mind that we have people
that are having to move every 6 months or so, and sometimes out of their GP's catchment area because they can no longer afford the private market rents that are going on. So housing has an impact too, and we have to bear that in mind. Overcrowding in housing, it's another major impact. You've got an overcrowded house, you've got condensation, you've got damp and mold, you've got further problems for that GP to solve. If we don't build our way to a better borough with more housing that is of the right sort, that is for the people that are currently here, that meets the needs of those individuals, we will be perpetuating the problem. We will be forcing our young people to move away. Those young people who use their GP less when they're working, but still have their money allocated to that GP to keep that practice going. It's a balancing act that we've got to get right, and we can't always be on this side of.
Councillor Martin,
No.
I can speak a little bit longer, but I've got to increase the time limit on the motion at the moment, so Councillor Bowen can come back. Okay, just a couple more minutes.
We have to make sure that we get it right and we get the balance right. It can't just be about saying no all the time. It's got to be about saying we can deliver for the people of this borough, but we need your support, central government, please.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. As I've had to increase the time, I would like Councillor Bowen to come back now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, everybody, for your comments this evening. Couple of points to pick up. I'm sure the leaders, part without actually making it part of the formal motion, that the letter can certainly include comments about the deprivation Councillor Gould was talking about. Coming back to the chat I was having a GP also about last night, we were talking about the ICB as well, and he said to me, "You've got contact the ICB, can you let me know who they are, because we ain't getting nothing out of them either." That's damning. Councillor Bonney also comments similar about Medway Hospital, Medway Maritime. Not the fault of the staff there. Morale, what I hear, is so low that something has got to give, and the thing that's given at the moment is patient safety. And something's got to be done. I would ask again that when the leader sends the letter to the minister, that hopefully you get a response, and when you do, can you share it? But could I also request for consideration, again, it doesn't need to be in the motion, that it might be also useful to send a similar letter to the Shadow Secretary of State for Health, and also to the ICBs locally. I don't think anyone would necessarily disagree with that, but doesn't need to be part of the motion, because that's to the minister, but I think it might be useful. But thank you, everybody, and I look forward, I move to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. So I now ask the members to vote on this motion. Is there anybody that's not? Everyone?
The members also are at home and not here, so I would also be voting in favour.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. And that actually. 2024. If you'd like to join me in the parlour for a drink afterwards, and otherwise have a safe journey home. Have a lovely evening.